On today's episode, I'm joined by Tim Brey, a phenomenal pianist, composer, and educator based in Philadelphia. Known for his dynamic work as a bandleader, sideman, and solo artist, Tim's performed with legends like Terell Stafford, Peter Bernstein, and Samara Joy. His most recent studio album, News, came out in 2022, and he also has a great voice shaping young musicians at Temple University. His thoughtful approach to both performance and education makes this a conversation that I'm looking forward to having. So we're live. So Tim, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. We were just talking before you start recording, and the most recent album you had came out in 2022, but we're in 2025 now, and I know you have a lot of exciting things in the works. So what's on the agenda for this year that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I'm excited. I have two kind of projects in the pipeline right now. My last record, News, was some music that was mostly original music that I had written sort of during the pandemic, and was compiling into different configurations for different ensembles, some trio stuff, some solo stuff, some quintet stuff. And through that process, I kind of fell into this new configuration of a sextet that I really particularly like working with. So the main project I'm focused on for the next couple months, and I'll be hopefully going to the studio in May to get started on, is a sextet project with bass, drums, piano, EVI played by John Swana, and alto and tenor. So some stuff that I've been kind of trying to arrange for a slightly larger format. And yeah, pretty much all original music that I've written in the past year and a half or so.
It's funny you mentioned John Swana because I was just watching one of the before I do an interview. I like to listen to the person a little bit just to get in the mindset of being ready to talk to that particular person. So I was actually just watching you playing with him in a video of Chris's, and I think it's such a cool thing that he's doing. With the EVI, it's called, right?
Yeah, Evie for short. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's your preference as far as working with him, because it's just I mean, it's such a unique thing that he's doing. Does it bring a different light to the music you're trying to play when it's using that instrument?
It definitely does, yeah. And I think for clarity, it's also worth saying that my preference is just John himself. I just
Right.
love him as a musician. But I love the way that, he's really found a voice on the EV. And I do think that it kind of automatically adds this other element to the music, especially when mixed with acoustic instruments, because it doesn't really become like an entirely electric band. The EV just kind of takes a role as another horn, but then there's this like stratospheric element that John can get to, that is, I don't know, I find it really special.
And he's certainly a name when you think about Philadelphia, though, too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. When I started playing with him, he was kind of coming, he had some issues with the trumpet, but he was coming back on valve trombone and also then started playing trumpet again. But the Evie was always there. And so it's been cool to just have him. We've been working together now for probably over a decade in lots of different configurations. So it's been really nice to like kind of get into a thing and yeah, have him as a part of the ensemble.
And Philadelphia has such a rich tradition in terms of musicians who came from Philadelphia. John Coltrane and Lee Morgan,
Of
just to
course.
those two. And then you think about like other people like Christian McBride and Joey DeFrancesco, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Were the people from that generation musicians you were checking out in Philadelphia? Or I guess I want to know, who were you checking out in Philly when you started making that your musical home?
Yeah, I caught kind of the tail end of there was a really legendary club that had been around for many years called Ortlieb's that was in Philly. And they actually still are around. They're not doing jazz anymore, but they do music programming. But yeah, well, when I moved to Philadelphia, I moved in 2008 for my undergrad at Temple, and I caught the last, couple kind of brilliant years of the session that would happen at Ortlieb's, which at the time was different configurations, but was often Mike Boone and Byron Landon, Mickey Roker, Madison Rass, different people. Sid Simmons was on it for most of the time. There's like all that crew of people. I think was kind of my introduction into the Philly jazz scene, and really like kind of my adult musical life also, which I think has definitely shaped how I've conceived of my own music and like where I'm going and trying to what I'm trying to do. But yeah, the Orleans was kind of a mainstay for a while, and and yeah, that was definitely kind of a special, I guess, introduction to the scene for
Do you
me.
remember the first time you went there to go hear music or play? Like can you remember that, you think?
Yeah, funny enough, it was before I lived in Philadelphia, which is, why it was partially on my radar. But my brother, who was a music fan, not a jazz musician, but a music fan and a musician in his own right, knew that I was getting into jazz. I think I was like maybe 14 or something like that. I was in middle school, and he said, there's this club in Philadelphia that, I've heard really great things about, and I think it would be fun if we could go into the city together and I could take you. So I came in and I don't remember who was on drums, but I remember it was Mike on bass, and it was Sid on piano. And yeah, I just remember thinking like, as a person who grew up, entrenched in music, but not living in a city, I remember thinking that there was kind of a different energy and something like really special going on that I hadn't really had much exposure to outside of recordings that I loved. So to be able to see that live was like a pretty defining experience for sure.
Oh no, I know what you're talking about. Like I remember the first time I ever went to Fat Cat in New York City, and I actually like remember it. Like it's like if I
Sure.
close my eyes, I feel like it's almost like a similar type of energy where the music is just world class, and there's just a vibe that
Yeah.
there's no other way to say it. There's just an energy that you feel, and I would imagine that it was might have been very similar to the to what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was still pretty young at that point too. So for me, it was, yeah, formative for sure.
Yeah. And we know you went to Temple, but at the time, University of the Arts was still in existence. They're no longer in existence. Was
Mhm.
there a tight community among the Philly universities when you were going there, or was it kind of like you were really just around the people, the students you were with, and going out on your own? Like I'm kind of wondering about that. Was there a camaraderie between those universities?
I think there was camaraderie and there was also rivalry. I think naturally having like two big music schools in the same city, there's going to be like this sort of unspoken, like there's a downtown vibe, there's a North Philly vibe, Temple and UArts pedagogically, I think for a very long time had some similarities and then also had pretty significant differences too. So I definitely started connecting more with people from UArts as I like moved to different places in Philadelphia. Living in Temple's campus was great and it was also kind of like insular in a way. So when I moved off campus and when I started like actually spending time around Philadelphia, in the after my first year when I was like kind of making the rounds more, I think I got to meet people through the scene. And that, of course, introduced me to a lot of different kind of people, but especially because of the music, school scene, I also met a bunch of the people from UArts.
And you teach there now, right?
Yeah, I've been at Temple as of January for a decade teaching, which is a cool. I'm very pleased to be there. I was actually also at UArts for a while, but I left there maybe 2 years before they closed.
Right. So how does it feel teaching at a university that you actually studied it? Is it, I mean, is it a little strange? Is it exciting? Do you feel more like you're able to connect with the students more because you have more of an understanding of what it's like to be there? Um, I'm kind of curious about what you feel about how the mentally it is like just being in that situation.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's changed over time for sure. When I started there, it was it was odd. It was like a strange experience because I was young enough that I still knew people who I had gone to school with who were like ending up, in classes of mine sometimes, which was a little strange. But yeah, after the first couple of years, I think I was able to settle into kind of, I guess a position of, yeah, maybe having some familiarity with the program, knowing kind of the challenges that a program like Temple presents for students. And I think also just being a young person who, himself was and of course still is like kind of in a transitional period as we always are, in our careers and in our own like lives. I think it's easier for me in some ways to connect to students because it's something that I like remember feeling and I think is still very kind of connected.
Yeah. Well, I also one of the things I was kind of curious about too with that you add the EV into your, I'm sure I should have mentioned this before, but it's there's a lot of people who, if they want to have a trumpet in their band, it's like just going to be trumpet, but to have that as part of their ensemble is someone who has a certain, you know, they're open-minded and they're willing to, explore other sounds in general. So what else influenced you musically besides jazz that we might be really surprised to know?
I don't know if really surprised, but I definitely when I was younger, I really I got into improvised music through through jazz, but also through kind of like just the piano as an instrument. So I think I was really interested in like my brothers listened to a lot of rock music, and that was something that I kind of grew up on, and also grew up on kind of listening to like different people, different pianists and kind of the piano rock. I remember I was a big Ben Folds fan, which is like a funny way to think about coming to jazz. But that idea of like writing compositionally, but also having like the instrument itself be kind of forward in the music was always pretty caked into like my understanding of what music was. So like in high school, I had like a rock band that I wrote music for and sang. And when I got to school for jazz, which I was really passionate about, I was also like equally at the time at least passionate about like writing my own music and singing and like writing lyrics. And I think coming from a background that wasn't, specifically just like acoustic straight ahead, I think I was really into fusion, and I kind of had this sense of like instruments have colors and acoustic instruments have certain colors and electric instruments have other colors. And so you can have like a I don't know, I'd like the heterogeneity of like, maybe some things are electric, maybe some things are acoustic, and you can kind of get this interesting sound that way. So I think that's part of what maybe opened me up to the idea of like having an electric instrument in the band, was like, oh yeah, this is something that I can hear like from a composing standpoint of like this adds like a vibe.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you said Ben Folds Five. That's
That was yeah, it was a band. I was super super into them. I like transcribed a bunch of their music when I was
oh
a kid.
really?
Yeah, 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 yeah. My brothers listened to them a lot, and I'm the youngest of three, so you're always trying to impress your older brothers. So they'd be like, "Oh, do you know this one?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'll figure it out." So,
So will you go? Are you still going to when you go hear music now? Will you go to those type of concerts, if quote unquote non-jazz concerts, if the opportunity comes? You think?
every now and again, I think my interests from that particular genre have definitely shifted quite a bit. I think I'm more likely to go see like a I don't know, like an electronic concert or something at this point, like some kind of off-brand original EDM kind of vibe than I am to see like an original rock band. But
Let me ask you this. I didn't come from jazz at all. I didn't get into jazz till I went to college,
yeah,
so I didn't know anything. But when you're, I almost felt like there was sort of a disconnect between the musicians who were we are jazz people from the get-go, like they were playing, that's all they knew essentially. That was like 98% of their musical upbringing. They were just trained in this music, they were already playing, like understood. And then there were other people who were sort of into it, just getting into it, in it for
mhm.
a year, like. And it almost feels like at least I felt at that time in college there was sort of a disconnect. I mean, is that something you saw, or at all when you were studying this, like that? There's almost like two different worlds, sort of, with those who just start with it and those who don't.
I think yeah, in some ways for sure. I remember like one of the things I remember about getting to school was that I because I checked out a lot of different music, and jazz and straight ahead was definitely something I checked out a lot of. That's why I was there. But um but I remember meeting people who had just come from like a purely like we've been listening to big band records since we were you know like fresh out of the womb, and I remember being so in awe of that, like just the thoroughness that comes with that. But then I'd mention some, whatever, like artist that I'd been listening to that was something, left of jazz, and that would be like totally off the radar. So I think that's one of the cool things about a program, you know, like in an ideal world, I think that's one of the best things that the university can offer, is like the ability to kind of meet people who are different from you, and like maybe you can expose them to some things, maybe they can expose you to some things.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. But it's interesting how these programs, even if someone is just getting into jazz, but they have talent or not, they will at least give them the opportunity to be to grow and to have the experience and get exposed to it. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
As far as performing in Philadelphia, Philly is concerned, is Chris is kind of your home, where if you're going to play, that's where you prefer to play.
Yeah, Chris's is a great venue. There's but the trick of Philadelphia, and I don't think this is anything unknown to the community here and to the community at large is like, we only have a handful of dedicated venues. So Chris's has been really a reliable and kind of faithful home for
So Chris
jazz in
is
Philadelphia.
south, right?
Yeah,
Time.
Chris's South Time. Solar Myth is a relatively newer venue that's been doing kind of more avant-garde programming through Mark Chrisman and Ars Nova. And then very recently, probably our newest club is Cellar Dog, which is obviously a New York transplant. Um, so yeah, but I mean, Chris's has just been the club that has been here and has been kind of like reliably bringing in local talent, but also reliably bringing in like national and international talent. And I think that, for that reason alone, in addition to the fact that they've supported the music for so long, it's definitely in a lot of ways, it's a mainstay club in Philly for straight ahead for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, it was open when you arrived in Philadelphia. Um, so you've seen
Yep.
Chris's
Yep.
over the past 17 years in a sense. Has it changed in
One of the
terms of
few venues that has continued.
Mhm.
Say that one more time. I think I lost you for a sec.
Yeah, we need to just 1 second. I'm sorry, we had a little technical error. And we should be back now. We should be back now, right?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, you've seen Chris's over the last 17 years or so. Have you seen it go through changes in terms of, certain artists they bring in, people that used to play there don't play there anymore? Obviously, you still play there, but have you seen it change? Because 17 years is a long time for a club. Like most clubs don't survive at all. Most clubs are that open, everyone's very excited for, and they're dead within a matter of years.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, for sure have seen Chris's change a lot. And I think I guess maybe just because this is the most recent and notable change, but like, COVID was just obviously such a scourge on our world, but also on our industry. And I think that at that time, Chris has kind of had the opportunity to like really kind of explore the streaming space.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know what would have happened if they hadn't been able to kind of pull that together, but they were able to get some money to like really invest in making that the streaming there like a huge part of their business model. And also just totally redid the club. So I think that having that element and having like a really really high quality video stream has
High
really enabled
quality.
them. Yeah, yeah, has enabled them to like connect, I think, on a more on a broader level. Because I think Chris's has always been a name in Philadelphia, but I think because of that, it's like people see these videos around the world, which is kind of a cool concept. As obviously there are, clubs in New York, Smalls and others that do the same thing. And it's like that really gives you kind of a different level of yeah, I don't know,
Well, no,
like
my friend did a gig
interest.
there and he did a gig and it's got like I don't know, like maybe like 10,000 views or something like that,
Yeah.
which there weren't 10,000 people at the club, that's for sure. But
Gig. Yeah.
and it was just giving him that extra bit of exposure.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think those videos would be getting the views if the quality wasn't as good as it is because there's a
Yeah.
noticeable difference between that and someone just shooting on their iPhone or something, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, they really invested money into it, and the engineers there are great.
No, Tim, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for, just sitting down with me for a little bit today and getting to know you. And Philadelphia is very lucky to have a musician like yourself and,
Oh, grateful. Thanks.
the city of brotherly love. So, thanks so much for speaking with me today.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.